Good morning, and thank you for joining us today for Moving Goods with eCargo Bikes. My name is Simbiat Yusuf, and we want to thank you for joining us this morning. And today we look forward to a discussion on why eCargo deliveries are the next movement in deliveries of goods. Attendees this morning, please be sure to submit your questions through the attendee chat, and we will get through your questions, as many as we can, at the end of all of the presentations today. We will also be sending out the webinar slides shortly after the presentation today, and that would also include a recording of the presentation this morning. And for some of our new audience, we will begin with a brief introduction of Fourth, who we are and what we do. Fourth is a nonprofit trade association advocating for electric, shared, and smart mobility. We are working in four main focus areas, which are industry development, policy advocacy, consumer engagement, and demonstration projects. If you want to find any more information about Fourth, our membership program, our work, please find us at www.fourthmobility.org. And as we mentioned last week, EDTA, the host and organizer of the International Electric Vehicle Symposium and Exposition, made the unfortunate decision, but necessary decision, to cancel the EVS 33 conference due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And Due to the cancellation of EVS, Fourth is now hosting the 5 roadmap panel sessions that were to be held in conjunction with the EVS 33 program as webinars. So please join us from June 15th through the 17th through the 19th for 5 engaging webinars, and the roadmap conference will return as a standalone event on June 29th through the 30th of 2021. Look forward to more information on that in the coming weeks, months. And the National E-Mobility Equity Conference presented by Fourth and EV Noir has been rescheduled for November 20th, 2020. You can find more information on the website or on our website at fourthmobility.org/events. And now I will pass it to Fourth Senior Program Manager, Steve Gutmann.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm just going to quickly introduce our speakers today. I'm not going to be doing much speaking at all, but we'll be moderating questions later. First to speak today will be Sam Starr. Sam lives in Vancouver, BC, and he's an independent consultant on eCargo bicycle logistics, and has a background in logistics as well. After Sam speaks, we'll hear from Franklin Jones, who is an operator of, he's the founder and CEO of Beeline Urban Delivery, which is an operator here in Portland that has a really interesting sort of blended business model that many of you who are in Portland will be familiar with, but folks outside of Portland likely won't be. I just have one slide that, let's see, that I wanted to show you all, and that is I just did a search over the last couple of days about eCargo bikes and came up with 4 pretty interesting headlines. I mean, I guess, eCargo delivery is sort of having a moment right now. These are headlines from 4 different cities, and they're all about pilot programs. One's in Seattle, one's in Miami, one's in New York City, and one is in Portland. And they all use eCargo bikes and eCargo trikes for various kinds of delivery services. I also noticed, actually, this morning, I got up early and did a quick search and learned that literally today, Amazon announced a new position as their principal. I'll just read the job description for you. And again, this is just an indication of the moment that we're in. It says principal e-bikes. Amazon Logistics is seeking a principal to launch electric bikes for our hyper-growth North America delivery service partner business. This is a unique opportunity to build a new delivery model and integrate it end to end into our existing last mile programs. So, and like, again, this is literally from today. It's a new job announcement, and I thought folks on the call would be interested. So it does look like these pilots, at least with one major delivery firm, are going to evolve into full-fledged programs. Let's see. Without further ado, I am going to pass the baton over to Sam. But before I do, I want to remind you again, if you have questions, please submit them through the attendee chat. Enjoy the speakers and talk again in a few.
Hi. Hi, thank you, Steve, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you and Franklin to talk about my favorite subject, psychologistics. Excuse me. The cargo bike has already started transforming urban logistics in our cities, as Steve was just talking about. With COVID-19, the cargo bike will prove to be a resilient vehicle for urban freight, final mile delivery, and even as a replacement for your car, truck, or delivery van. I like this quote from Mikhail Kovo-Anderson, who started Copenhagenized Design Company, focused on planning cycle cities. The bicycle can get you to work, absolutely. What needs to be part of the discussion is how the bicycle can do everything else as well. In Copenhagen, where Michael's from, 1 in 4 families own a cargo bike. Across Europe, cargo bikes are quite literally being used for everything from family transport, heavy cargo delivery, healthcare applications, blood delivery vehicles, food services, and even hearses. The technology and movement is driven by mobility options, cargo needs, innovation, and infrastructure. Cyclologistics improves public health, replaces automotive trips, reduces pollution, and provides cost-effective transportation and delivery services. In times of social distress and financial uncertainty, like we are in today, these bikes are lifelines for families and businesses with minimal operations costs. Here's a graphic of the types of cargo bikes on the market today. The graphic is in French. I will explain it to you in English. The numbers in the graphic represent the numbers of wheels on a bike. Cargo bikes can carry 5 times their weight, which is a much better weight ratio than that of an automobile or a delivery van. In North America, our definition of the cycle of a bicycle and pedal-assisted bicycles, e-bikes, has a maximum of 3 wheels, and therefore the bikes that you see in the upper right-hand quadrant in number 4 are not legal and are also unavailable in the market today here. What's wrong with this picture? I know I can't bike down that street, and those pedestrians don't look really happy. In the US, prior to COVID, e-commerce has seen a 25% year-over-year growth. Since COVID, e-commerce is growing even faster. Canada Post has announced that they are seeing peak holiday season level volumes this time of year. Is this how we really want to use our urban space? Believe it or not, the real cost of the final mile often makes up to 50% of total actual shipping costs. And with speed and volume doesn't always come efficiency. And our desire to have that product delivered to us in an hour comes at a cost. You might not see that cost, you may not even pay for that cost, but that cost also comes with social and environmental consequences. These delivery vans and vehicles clog our streets, our sidewalks, and our lives, and vans are not optimized for urban delivery. The cargo bike is the solution. Using cargo bikes instead of delivery vans can reduce delivery costs by 60% or more. Cargo bikes can increase productivity and have been proven to do 10 to 12 deliveries per hour as opposed to 5 or 6 deliveries per hour made by parcel vans. They also do so at a fraction of the cost and the impact. A recent University of Toronto study has shown that a single cargo bike replacing one delivery truck can save upwards of 1.9 metric tons of CO2 per year. and putting a cargo bike charging a cargo bike on the British Columbia energy grid here. The carbon footprint of a cargo bike is 1% that of a Ford Transit Connect delivery van, and can carry a similar capacity. The use of city containers, such as those seen on the bottom right, provides seamless systems and physical integration and reduce cost of implementation of these bikes into larger delivery networks. So what's the potential opportunity for eCargo bikes? These numbers demonstrate the estimated percentage of trips that can be replaced by cyclologistics. While these numbers are from Europe, I like to think these actually are aspirational for us here in North America. When we think of the impact of COVID-19, the current drop in vehicle traffic, our reallocation of streets, these numbers actually seem more achievable. There's great potential for more trips, for goods and services to be made by electric bikes and electric cargo bikes. We're only at the beginning of this movement here in North America. And there are already some great examples around the world of cyclologistics operations showing that this transition is actually possible. And it's important to know when I go through some of these examples that really the cargo bike is only a small piece of what makes these cyclologistics solutions so successful. And Zedify, as some of you may know, is a sustainable delivery firm like Franklin's, based in the United Kingdom. They operate in 8 cities and have a fleet of over 60 cargo bikes with a few electric vans. Zedify's zero-emission fleet, hubs, and powerful logistics software allows them to perform deliveries in urban centers for small, medium-sized businesses, as well as really integrate with larger firms to handle their first and final mile needs. It's really their software here that's so special. Couriers Mechelen, forgive my pronunciation, in Belgium, was started as a great initiative by the city of Mechelen. The city provided a subsidy towards a hub space and a cargo bike to 2 ambitious entrepreneurs. The city also supported with local marketing to really develop the customer base. This investment has paid off in the form of reduced congestion, increased local business participation, and not only has the program grown, but the hub has become a transloading point for larger carriers doing deliveries in the city. Wouldn't it be great to do that here? Back on this side of the Atlantic, there are already cyclologistics operations that Steve actually has started talking about. In New York, Portland, Miami, Montreal, Toronto, Victoria, Vancouver, and many more are starting to pop up. Franklin will talk about his operation and how he's developed his business over the years, as well as the impact of COVID-19 has had on it. Here in Canada is a great example. Montreal's Colibri project is an example of a city taking initiative just like the city of Mechelen I mentioned earlier. The city of Montreal launched a hub and cargo bike pilot out of their former bus station with delivery partners including Purolator and local courier firms. The program has been a success. The transfer hub streamlines logistics in the urban core, and the program is actually seeking to expand its reach. With more than 7,500 parcels shipped in the pilot so far, 15 fewer trucks now operate downtown. The project has also shown a 45% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions and a 15% improvement in productivity for the delivery partners operating. This is only the beginning, and not only for the city of Montreal, but for cyclologistics across North America. Okay, so we've now talked about the benefits and some solutions and some examples around the world. But it's also important that we acknowledge the challenges that this industry currently faces. There are some big challenges for this industry. We face equipment shortages as there's pent-up demand for cargo bikes, particularly for couriers that are running them here today. And here in North America, we have few manufacturing companies making these cargo bikes, as a majority of them are in Europe. It's also important that more municipalities and private companies step up to the plate with urban mini hub pilots. The cycling industry business model is also currently tailored very much towards the recreational rider and the local bike shop, and not for really bikes for transport or business to business operations. This difference is really crucial, particularly in the distribution, service, and maintenance of cargo bikes, and when they're being used for logistics needs and need to be operating 24/7. Also, while automated vehicles, electric vehicles, and robots are fantastic, what they don't solve is the final steps part of the final mile. Cargo bike really excels in this environment. And I will say that these do have their place, that those AVs, EVs, and drones all do have their place in the supply chain and logistics chain. So COVID-19 has brought us to an unprecedented point. The challenges mentioned have changed slightly. E-commerce, grocery, and food delivery are exploding in popularity and need. And unfortunately, many small businesses are suffering. The cargo bike solves a lot of these problems and provides capability for businesses, both large and small, to not only perform sustainable deliveries, but also provide mobile services to their customers. In the face of disasters and pandemics, cargo bikes provide a simple, lower cost solution that can keep businesses and people alive. This picture shows a group of couriers in Italy performing PPE deliveries. In the times of immediate need and public health crisis, the cargo bike is that solution for safe, efficient, fast delivery of goods across cities. I mentioned Zetify earlier. Zetify has created a partnership with a company called Click It Local to help support and maintain high street businesses who have had to shift to online shopping and delivery in order to service their customers and keep their businesses alive. They hope to expand this project across the rest of the UK where Zetify operates. So how do we move forward from here? This is a list of some things that we need to consider. Some of these items are easy, others are a lot more challenging to implement for municipalities and for companies. We should be able to and really want to take these actions and want to improve our cities and the livability in them. I can help companies and municipalities looking to develop these initiatives, and I'm more than happy to consult about cyclogistics in any forum. I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes. Using SUVs in cities is like cutting butter with a chainsaw. I first heard this last year at the International Cargo Bike Festival in the Netherlands. And I think it's a quote to remember when we look at the potential of the cargo bike and cyclogistics. Please consider what vehicle you use around your cities. Is there a better alternative? Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to all of your questions.
All right. Again, just a reminder, keep submitting the questions. There's a bunch coming through the attendee chat, and we'll get to them as soon as Franklin finishes his presentation, which we'll go with next. Thanks, Sam, and we'll look forward to the post-presentation discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Just a note of technical difficulties. I'm actually just on the phone here, so I'm going to be asking Forrest to advance the slides. But that being said, no worries. Welcome. My name is Franklin Jones, and I am the CEO and founder and owner of Beeline Urban Delivery. And simply put, our mission is to make our communities more livable. Go ahead to the next slide, please. In classic social entrepreneurial fashion, we look at a problem statement and seek to solve that problem. In this case, we see that urban congestion and vehicle emissions render cities increasingly unlivable, commercial distribution untenable, and last mile delivery more expensive. And to the next slide. And really that our future of our cities depends on the sustainable delivery of goods, supporting local and regional supply chains. This is us in Portland, Oregon, with one of our kind of classic eCargo trikes. And that is really what we're best known for, utilizing a custom-built electric assist cargo tricycle, and then utilizing the unique advertising that they also deliver. And in this slide, I'm going to kind of point out some of the advantages for Beeline for using this type of vehicle in the marketplace. It actually also kind of represents the business case for eCargo trikes in the market. So let's start with volume. Our trikes carry about 600 pounds of cargo capacity at 60 cubic foot volume. To give you a sense of where that lies in a traditional vehicle, that is about the same as a small Ford Transit. Our wheelbase is 48 inches, which enables us to travel within the bike lanes or bicycle paths, as well as to sneak through areas where there are bollards. Central to our model is that these are electric-assisted drivetrains. In Oregon, we have a watt output limit of 1,000 on our electric-assisted motors, which is a significant advantage for Oregon because it allows us to essentially put the tugboat of bicycles onto the road. And without that, we would not be able to hire a diverse range of riders, nor would we have the consistency of delivery times that we see. So it's really evens the playing field in terms of delivery time. Also key is currently we are free from licensing and permit, and we are able to avoid the hassles and costs of parking loading zones. This last one is quite important. The ability to park in the furnishing zones of the sidewalk, which is the first 50 inches of the sidewalk, where the bike staples and newspaper racks and trees, etc. are. Being able to park in there allows us to make curbside direct delivery into our delivery locations. It also means that we are actually freeing up loading zones, which enables other vehicles to park in there and thereby freeing up the congestion flow. It's my belief that parking and the limited access to freight parking is one of the key components that enables the e-trike and e-cargo bikes a very positive impact and a good advantage in the marketplace. And then naturally, our trikes are large enough to also carry advertising. This provides a tertiary revenue source to us as well. So we have our direct revenue from our delivery and a secondary revenue from our advertising partners, those of which we deliver directly for, as well as non-delivery advertising partners. It's key to our business model. But we're not only a trike-based delivery company. Beeline also runs an urban consolidation center that really focuses on providing space and services to the small and local emerging food producers and farmers and ranchers, as well as larger companies like Office Depot, Glory Bee Foods, or New Seasons Markets, or organically grown company here in Oregon, as a cross-dock or a transfer station for last mile deliveries. We've worked for the past 10 years with Office Depot to cross product into our location and then out into the city of Portland accounts, as well as Portland State University. So some wonderful partnerships there that utilize urban consolidation centers. So what that looks like in terms, next slide, please. And what that looks like in terms of total business model or a mapping is that you can see that we operate from a hub and spoke model, but then also utilize our client locations as in-market hubs as well. So if you start in the beginning of the model where you see the Beeline logo, you'll see that on a given day we have a produce distributor, an office products distributor, as well as many small makers bringing product to the warehouse. From that, we consolidate into deliveries, and we head out onto our trikes. The trikes might take 3 or 4 stops, perhaps delivering produce to restaurants, and then we'd be empty and we'd pick up at a bakery, and we'd pick up another 12 to 15 restaurant stops and deliver those breads all the way back as we travel back to the warehouse, essentially a backhaul delivery route. And then we also utilize our vehicles to collect hard-to-recycle items from our clients and bring them to our warehouse, consolidating them, and then taking those to an appropriate processor. And then finally, we also do have a truck in the system, and that truck enables us to move pallets into the warehouse that get divided into product going into the last mile, or to service new seasons markets, and regional groceries, which during the time of COVID has really been a lifesaver to Beeline. Kind of a complicated slide, so I'll pause this for a second to let you absorb it, and then I'll move on to the next. Next slide, please. So in terms of a business, we've been around since 2009, and you can see here that we've had steady revenue growth throughout the past 10 years. And in fact, the inflection point of 2017, you see where we started to adapt the urban consolidation model and add additional revenue source to our last mile delivery. And so now going into 2021, we continue to see our revenues climb. And even in COVID, we have been able to maintain a month-over-month revenue source in times where other delivery companies, particularly those who are serving the restaurants, have really been hurt. Next slide, please. But true to our B Corporation status and our overarching mission, we're very focused on making our communities more livable. So outside the dollars, you're looking at over 500,000 truck delivery miles avoided over the course of our history. That's 800 metric tons of CO2, or over 300,000 miles of trike travel. We've also rescued over 350,000 pounds of food and redistributed it to places of need and nonprofits. And then on the recycling program, on an annual basis, we collect about an Olympic swimming pool size of styrofoam and hard to recyclables and get those to an appropriate processor. We've also been very active in the B Corp community, promoting business as a force for good. Next slide, please. So our model is really just built upon design thinking principles, and we continue to practice these in our daily operations. So we want to empathize with the market and define that, ideate, prototype, and test. That thinking enables us to have developed these best practices over time at Beeline. First and foremost, we maintain a strict focus on trip reduction, regardless of the vehicle. So it's important to note that Beeline is not a courier company. We don't do one-to-one dispatch deliveries. We focus on consolidated route-based deliveries. We're essentially a small trucking service, an LTL trucking service, and not necessarily a courier or on-demand delivery business. And that's because of our focus on trip reduction, regardless of whether it's in a tricycle or a truck. We believe that that has the most overarching impact on the environmental footprint. Secondly, it's important that we've maintained diversification of industries and clients. While we're known to work within the food and beverage world here in Portland, our diversification to work with Office Depot, to work with folks like Lime or Bike Town in terms of rebalancing other mobility sectors, enables us to continue to grow our market outside of only food and beverage. And also, we essentially have 4 business models under one. That is the delivery business, the advertising business, the warehousing business, and a small co-working space associated with the warehousing. So those 4 come together for a more powerful business model in terms of diversification of industries and clients. And then finally, and this is perhaps the most important, is we must trust and empower our frontline staff to excel in the roles. It doesn't matter if you're driving a truck or driving a tricycle at this point. It's the trust and the belief that those operators are doing their job at the highest rate possible and giving them the freedom and the power to do so that really makes Beeline stand out. Next slide, please. And those best practices have helped us develop and ideate really interesting models. Here's a quick kind of flow chart of a very interesting consolidation model we have for New Seasons Markets, which is our regional grocery here in Portland, Oregon. They have 18 stores in the metro area, and we provide a consolidation service for about 115 small local producers who would otherwise be going independently into the stores on a daily basis. So we receive, up on the top left-hand corner, you see our receiver receiving product. We then aggregate it and put it onto our green carts, and those carts get received into the system for the marketplace, and then they get transported either on a truck or a trike to the store, bypassing the receiving at the store level and going straight to the shelves to stock the shelves. It's very efficient and allows small independent producers to have distributive distributive functions without having to join a distributor per se. So it's very innovative, very impactful. Next slide, please. Of course, there are significant challenges to the model as well. Sometimes the price supposed to go the wrong direction, as you can see in the photo there. That's a prime example of a load shift. And that gets to one of our challenges, standardization of our fleet, making sure that all of our bikes are the same, equipped with the same braking systems, the same power systems, the same batteries. And Sam alluded to the challenges in the domestic manufacturing. This is still pretty much a one-to-one industry, and we're looking for the ability to go to a much more robust vehicle at a standardization for multiple fleets. The second one then is balancing staffing and labor models. Again, we are not a contracted labor model. We are an employee labor model. And so in doing so, we have to make sure that every hour is essentially billable and balancing those labor needs. And then finally, the adoption rate of cargo trikes in the U.S. does remain relatively low, despite the noted advantages, and agree that right now we are probably looking at a turning point in that adoption rate as these advantages of the cargo trikes start to become more known. So I'm excited to what lies ahead. Next slide, please. During COVID-19 specifically, we are primarily a B2B restaurant and office delivery, and those routes have decreased by 30%. So that has hurt us. However, in the delivery marketplace, I believe that trikes are a safer option with appropriate precautions. Primarily, this means that riders are isolated in their delivery mechanisms. They're not having to sit next to another person during the delivery. They also are not operating in enclosed vehicles, and our trikes can be sanitized and wiped down very quickly and very easily, which we do multiple times a day. It also means we can do touchless delivery services and a number of very effective components to get the product into the market in a safe fashion. Because of our model has been diversified, that has kept us in business, primarily because our work in our warehousing and our work closely with a regional retailer. And then finally, we are certainly seeing during COVID-19 that the resiliency of local supply chains are being highlighted, and that collaboration is extremely high right now in terms of looking at innovative methods for not only today, but for the future. So I'm very happy to get into a bunch of these questions. For those of you who want to reach out to me directly, here's my contact information as well as our sales line. You can find out more at our website as well. So with that, I will sign off and turn to the questions. So Steve, thank you for forwarding the slides. I hope that all worked.
Yeah, I think it worked. I think it worked quite well. All right. Well, so we've got a bunch of questions here, and I'm just going to kind of go through them one by one. The first one was a very specific question about New York City, and it was just a question as to whether Fourth is going to be if Fourth gets involved in lobbying activities, and if we might be interested in getting involved in an effort to revise state vehicle and traffic codes to acknowledge four-wheeled cargo. It says trikes, but I guess the four-wheeled cargo vehicles as bikes and not motor vehicles. And the answer to that is I'm not sure. Fourth does sometimes get involved in policy advocacy, but about this specific question, I asked the individual to contact me directly. So I don't know the answer to that. Question two, this is a question that I'm curious about as well. How do labor costs per delivery compare between bicycle delivery versus traditional panel van? And I don't know who the best person to address that question is, but either of you, I guess. Let's start with Sam. Do you have a response to that question?
It's a complicated question, actually, and I remember from my conversations with Franklin before. I know this is something that he thinks about quite often. Excuse me, for his couriers. I know it's a challenge, particularly here in North America, when we're dealing with a very contractor-driven model for our final mile logistics services, and therefore, the labor costs, well, whether you're driving a van or you're driving or you're riding a cargo bike, can fall under that kind of contractor model, which is either in some cases, unfortunately, a pay per package or pay for delivery. So I know with what I remember, and Franklin can definitely answer this question in further detail, but I know that by running more route based system like Beeline, you're able to better to pay your employees a bit better as well. And with that, Franklin.
Yeah, you're right. It's a very complicated answer, and you can imagine the various different variables that go into that. From the highest perspective, I would say that there's kind of two primary determinants. One is the density in which you are operating. The higher the density that you are operating, then the more cost-effective the trike labor model is going to be than the panel van-based labor model, primarily because of the efficiencies to parking. Once you're in the delivery market, let's say that you're delivering to a high-rise office building, once you're at the building and you're riding elevators, there's no difference whether you arrive in a truck or a tricycle. However, to be able to access those spots and able to gain either loading dock zone or loading space zone, or if we're just pulling up directly in front of the building, that's a big differentiator. And so our time per stop tends to be a lot less overall than a panel van delivery. So therefore, in a dense area, we can make more deliveries per hour than a panel van, and our labor cost side is better, especially if we're looking at the sweet spot that we found that is essentially 600 pounds at 3 stops or more. The tricycles become much more efficient in terms of their delivery and labor models. Now, the other key component of the labor model is what Sam alluded to as well, is it a contracted labor model or is it an employment labor model? The contracted labor model tends to be a one-to-one, and the burden seems to be placed on the contractors themselves, on the couriers, and it's in the gig economy, it can be very difficult for them to find living wage. The employment labor model places the burden essentially on the business to supply living wages and to make sure that there's enough jobs to go around, and therefore can be more expensive from a company-wide standpoint.
Yeah.
All right.
Steve, can I just add one other thing to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
And that is that one of the things I mentioned in my presentation is the really improved productivity that cargo bikes provide. And when they do so when they're best operated in about a 3 to 5 kilometer radius. um, sort of area, and that marketable difference in productivity does lower your per package costs. So when you think about the labor cost, that labor improvement that Franklin was just talking about, the improvement in productivity that Frank was just talking about, that is also really where you see that savings.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. We've got a bunch of questions to go through here, and I think one thing I might ask our panelists is if it's a really long and involved question, I think we might want to say like let's just say that's a it depends question, and maybe those questions we can follow up. I'm not really sure how, but maybe we can follow up with some written answers and some pointing to some resources, because we've got a lot of questions here to get through and we've only got a few more minutes. So I want to march through the rest of these as quickly as possible. Next question is, what type of infrastructure is needed for cargo bikes? Wider bike lanes or general traffic lanes? What's required?
So I'll say best practices that we've seen in the cities where cyclogistics is excelling or in cities where there is not just necessarily slightly wider bike lanes, such as Copenhagen, for example, has 2.2 meter wide unidirectional bike lanes in a large portion of its urban area, of its downtown. That's much wider than the bidirectional lanes that we even have here in Metro Vancouver, and even the ones I was riding around in Portland and Seattle recently. So there's a lot. Yes, wider bike lanes is key to this, but there are also some cargo bikes that are designed. I mean, these bikes are designed to work kind of in and out of the bike lane. However, they are most effective when they're used in the bike lanes and they can bypass traffic and therefore optimize their productivity.
Franklin, your trikes primarily ride in the bike lane, correct? And then people on bikes that are faster go around the cargo trikes. Is that right?
That is correct. Where there's bike lanes available, particularly in the high traffic areas like across bridges and everything, we definitely want to be utilizing the bike lanes. And the wider the bike lane, the safer it is for everyone. That being said, once we're in a dense urban core or in a neighborhood environment, then our trikes take the streets. And if you take Portland, for example, our trikes go on average like 13 miles an hour, and the lights are timed at about 13 to 14. So we can actually stay in the flow of traffic without really stopping, and nor do we create congestion. So we have a routing protocol and training that says our job is to decrease congestion. So if we are in the travel lane and there are a lineup behind us, we move over and let it flow, because congestion is all about the lack of flow in the urban area. So I would say just as a cap, wider bike lanes are definitely a significant advantage in an infrastructure. The other component is green loading zones, and really focusing on what that means in terms of opening up more efficient deliveries. And it gets back to how do you keep the grid flowing? And access to the entire infrastructure is really the greatest advantage, not necessarily what that infrastructure is.
All right, thanks. Here's an interesting question. Are transfer hubs sometimes shared by more than one company / organization, or do they tend to be, one hub per company? And then follow-up question, what does that look like on the ground?
So I believe it's Dan Woodward. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
Dan, I believe it's Dan Woodward who asked this question. This is actually another complex question, because there's a whole gamut range of whether these transfer hubs are publicly run. Some of them are privately run, like UPS setting up a small hub for a couple cargo bikes to do deliveries in downtown Dublin, for example. And the picture I showed at the end of my presentation of a Hermes or delivery guy coming out of a preloaded truck with goods. So that is actually also considered a transfer hub. And there are some great examples, some of which I've discussed, that are of a city taking a step forward and saying, okay, we want to create a public-private partnership to run these, and then there are others where you get more private, and then so I think you see a range. Franklin?
Well, if you look at what Beeline is doing specifically, we're running a transfer hub, but we have about 60 subtenants that work out of our warehouse. So it's also kind of a combined situation where not every item that goes into the hub is then connected to the Beeline trike delivery world. And I would agree that you're seeing, globally, you're seeing combinations of privately held transfer hubs, private-public partnerships, and then pure kind of not-for-profit, pure open transfer hubs where people are sharing space in a shared warehousing model. That is a very interesting model. You're always looking at the real estate costs, and urban consolidation centers by nature tend to be more expensive than the warehousing in outer limits. So you really have to look at your total footprint. Beeline is actually doing a study right now at Portland State University at utilizing university-based transfer hubs to be able to service a university market, because universities tend to have even higher challenges for access to traditional delivery vehicles.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. This is from Dan Jeffries, I'm not sure, for Sam. After watching the initial rollout of e-bike share and the saturation problem and its negative impacts, how does a city determine the correct balance of e-cargo bike delivery volumes with other vehicles and bikes using the same infrastructure?
I love these questions. My approach to answer something like that would be through an urban freight strategy, for example. As a city and a municipality evaluating where are the goods coming from and how best do they want to get those goods distributed to their citizens and to their residents. There are some good examples of cities across Europe that are right now doing some of these urban freight strategies, or developing some of these urban freight strategies. And even City of Vancouver has announced that they are actually working on a project to develop their urban freight strategy. The timeline of that is still to be determined. But really, I think there needs to be a strategy and a plan, and then how that overlaps with your cycling network, as well as with your freight network and your trucking network. Here in Vancouver, for example, trucks are not allowed on many streets, so they have to use the designated roadways, and these limitations and regulations and management, and as well combined with curbside management, will help relieve some of the negative effects and challenges that you mentioned there.
Okay, couple quick and pretty simple questions. Franklin, how are Beeline trucks fueled? And then what is the payload capacity of cargo bikes? And I think that's going to be a range for the second question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so our trikes are fueled by two primary sources. One, good old leg strength, and the second one is through our e-assist batteries. And those batteries, for us, those are kind of primary, 12-volt, heavy-duty, deep cycle batteries that are charged overnight, and it's charged on a system that includes solar panel. We also have some lithium ion in the system as well. And then in terms of payload capacity, our average capacity is about 600 pounds, though we continue to try to reach a working payload capacity closer to 800 pounds, but that's pretty difficult given the vehicle.
All right.
And in terms of
Sam,
total range,
anything?
Sam, it's all over the place.
Sorry, what was that? I couldn't hear.
Oh, sorry. I think Sam's slide of the range of cargo bike alludes to the range of their cargo capacity and their weight capacity as well.
Yes. Yeah, there's definitely a range, and there are cargo bikes that are carrying 3,000 liters, for example, or 3 cubic meters of volume, and as Franklin said, 600, 700 pounds, even 800 pounds at times. So these bikes really do have capabilities to do so, or sort of to replace your Ford Transit Connect van, for example. And what's it, just going back to that slide that Franklin just mentioned that I put up, is having four wheels is a much more stable platform than having three. And you'll find me as a strong advocate for removing the wheel limitation that we have across all of North America right now. And some of the work that I've been doing from the advocacy side has been on that. But there's definitely a value in having more variety and access to these more commercial cargo bikes that truly are truly being transformative cargo bikes in cities around the world today.
Interesting. Okay. Next question. Can you guys talk about some of the government incentives and support for cargo bike adoption, and whether and how such support have helped fleet expansion? The question comes from Pete Timaya in BC.
I guess I'll start.
Yeah.
So no worries. So we unfortunately here in North America, we're not seeing as much of a. I mean, there are a variety of government incentives that exist out there for bikes in some cases, but not much. And actually, here in BC, as Pete may be thinking about, in BC, if you buy a regular bike here, emphasis on regular bike here, that is not electrified, you actually don't pay provincial taxes on it. However, if you buy an e-bike, you do pay provincial taxes on it. So this is actually one of these things that is not working to get people out of their cars and not working to get people onto e-bikes, especially considering that e-bikes and e-cargo bikes cost a lot more than a standard traditional bike. I'd love to see more government incentives thrown towards businesses, small businesses, and for families to look at to get onto e-cargo bikes and to get out of their cars. There are some great examples that have been in the news recently in the UK and other places in Europe where the governments are putting programs together to get people and businesses to try out electric cargo bikes and e-bikes. And I think this is really important. And I would love to talk more about this with you, Pete, at a later time.
All right. Question for Franklin. Is your best marketing the fact that your trikes are seen on the streets? And how else has the word been spread about Beeline? What's your most successful advertising channel? And does climate action play a role? And let's see, why are your client businesses most interested in using your service?
Yeah, so I'll try to, that's a lot. I'll try to address it pretty succinctly. In terms of marketing efforts, Beeline direct marketing efforts, we really find that our business growth has primarily been based on referrals, and companies that use us work with, ask other companies, and then we end up kind of developing relationships with them. As well as, and this goes back to the previous question about what are local governments or regional jurisdictions doing, we have a strong relationship with the city of Portland in terms of being able to answer some of their RFPs for urban delivery. And so it's incentivized through business practices versus necessarily subsidized through regulation. I think there's more that we can be doing there across the board in terms of not only in our marketing, but also in terms of where that public-private relationship goes. In terms of our most successful marketing campaigns for our clients, yes, it really gets down to the fact that we have a fair amount of range and reach on our trikes in the downtown and dense urban cores. We can also advertise in areas where traditional billboards are not allowed because we're a moving vehicle, and that we move at a pace and a speed which now enables the passerbys to really capture that messaging quite well. Additionally, we have the ability to kind of fold in promotional work, handouts, gifting, etc. So it really enables us to be very flexible and diversified in how we meet our clients' needs. One of our favorite things to do is to go into Portland Sunday Parkways, which is an area every Sunday during the summer they close larger neighborhood sections and open it only to bikes. And it's a big festival, and we roll through and really support the action and community and our clients in many different ways. So great. Those are probably our most successful kind of combined marketing efforts. In terms of, let's see, I lost the other question there. In terms of employee retention and the environmental footprint, all of that goes into the success of the business. Clients stay with us because of our B Corp values and our high customer service, and our employee retention is the same. We don't pay the most of any company in Portland. It'd be great if we did, but we work very hard to develop an employee culture that supports individuals in their own livelihoods as well as in their passions of creating more livable communities and more environmentally friendly deliveries. And finally, on the environmental impact, it's substantial. We use a lot of impact reports, and then we're looking to actually offer that on the voluntary carbon offset market in the coming year.
All right, Symbiote, I think you are about to jump in and wrap things up. We're at 11 o'clock, and so we're out of time. Here are our email addresses. If any of you have questions for one or all of us, we'll respond to your questions promptly. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Symbiote, you want to wrap us up?
Yes, thank you so much, Steve. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Franklin, for joining us today. As they've all mentioned, these are their contact information. If you have any additional questions that we did not get through today, we say please email them. We will send a recap email as well before the end of the day, and that will have some additional resources and the recording and the slides today. And we do hope you can join us next week on May 12th, Tuesday. We will be joined by our Senior Director of Policy and Public Affairs, Jeanette Shaw, EVgo, and Green Lining Institute for Transportation Electrification, Infrastructure, and Stimulus. So please join us, and we hope you're able to join us on Tuesday. And thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Bye.